Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod. We have David Colleen with us. He is CEO at Sapient X. He's building the next generation of AI voice assistants using conversational characters to reinforce brand. It's quite interesting. So probably avatars. We're going to talk about AI, the future of AI, everything David has done in his career so far because he's been in VR and so forth. This pod is presented to you by podbuyer.com. If you want to start a podcast, if you want to scale a podcast, go to podbuyer.com. David, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Charles, thank you so much for having me today. It's great to be here, and let's have some fun today. I don't like to dwell on the past, but maybe we talk a little bit about the past, talk about the present, and talk about what I think is a really exciting future for making AI-powered talking characters. Um,
Yeah,
this all got
let's.
started 20 years ago. We had been our an earlier version of our company did the earliest 3D on the internet, and we made everything from virtual places to talking characters. But none of them were AI powered until 20 years ago. We were invited onto an AI research team by the U.S. government to make a synthetic character that could look for bad guys 24/7. And, this was in the wake of 9/11, and there was a lot of funding going towards advanced research looking for bad people. But it was a really compelling challenge to make a character that you could just talk to like we're talking together now, and possibly have the character could possibly have the knowledge and mannerisms and observational skills of a real person. So at that time, the person of interest was Saddam Hussein. So we were making the virtual Saddam project, trying to pattern ourselves on a living character. Well, that was really cool to work at that, but it was also very early, and we had to realize that all the AI tools were not yet in place to do what we wanted to do. By the way, another group on the research team, there were 18 seminal AI companies in that project. It was called NIMD. That's where IBM Watson started. So it was really cool hanging out with all these AI people, and it really energized our team wanting to eventually make a good character that you could talk to. Our first commercial implementation of this was in 2008. We were building navigation systems for the automotive and handheld market, and we wanted to have an AI assistant that could help give you directions so you get to your destination. Imagine you're driving, you want to keep the hands on the wheel. So a voice assistant was natural. We came out with that talking character that we call Sage in 2008, and it's also the same year that Siri was acquired by Apple. It's the same year that Google Assistant came out, connected to Google Maps. So a lot was happening back then. Now, we continued our work with the automotive industry, working with big companies, everyone from BMW to Volvo to Mitsubishi, and a lot of suppliers that maybe you haven't heard of. And very cool work with putting a character in the dashboard that could help you with navigation and music, but also do other things like control the air conditioning for you, turn the lights on and off. Anything that was user controllable in the car, our characters could do for you. That was all going great until about 4 years ago, when the chip shortage began in the automotive industry, and then COVID hit. Well, what happened is the car companies reacted to those two events by basically canceling all their R&D projects, and we were an R&D project for them. So we were faced with having um, really nifty characters that were highly accurate and could do things for you, but the auto industry wasn't buying, and it seemed like it was going to take a while before they would begin buying again. So we looked at the market and realized that there was a new problem with that had come up with COVID. Let's take as an example vending machines. People, 87% of people polled no longer wanted to touch the buttons on a vending machine or touch a touch screen at an ATM. And that was kind of an opportunity. Perhaps we could make characters that could interact with people in public places as an interface to important products like that, and fill a need that had been created by a pandemic. So we began doing that, and oddly enough, our very first customer that we built a vending machine for was Amazon. They wanted to dispense COVID supplies to their warehouse employees and truck drivers. So we built that system with a company in Ohio, and that was the first. But then some other things began to happen. uh, the Great Resignation. We didn't see that coming, but all of a sudden there was a lot of employers were having difficulties finding enough employees to fill jobs that people were luke about doing. Fast forward to today, right now there's 2 million unfilled jobs in the hospitality market, and that's hotels and restaurants and the like. And there's a huge shortage in healthcare. Everyone from the nurses to the people at the front desk. Um, Healthcare operations just can't find enough people to stay seated. They've doubled the salaries of that person at the front desk, and they still can't find enough people to do those jobs. Well, so this was a funny sort of opportunity for us because when we got started making conversational AI systems, sometimes people would accuse us of being there to steal jobs. Now the table had completely turned. All of a sudden, employers were coming to us saying, "We can't find enough people. Can you make digital people to do these jobs?" And the answer is yes, but yes, with a proviso. Some of the early people, for instance, wanted us to replace doctors. Well, I'll submit to you that that was a really bad idea. Doctors are the strongest part of the chain, but doctors need a lot of help. There's a lot of clerical tasks that a doctor has to do. And when they're doing clerical tasks, they're not doing the important work that they need to do to see patients. So if we can help a doctor or the person at a hotel who has a long line of people trying to check in, um, our characters are very good at that. We're terrible at making beds, but we're really good at checking people in and out of a hotel or taking your order at a restaurant. We're great at that. And some of the early testing in this is that we're not just as good as a human, but in some cases we're a little bit better. And we're able to do it a lot cheaper. We are less than half of the cost of the lowest paid person in a business, and that's with the hardware and all the things necessary to run our systems. So all of a sudden, the past few years, we're in a brand new market of filling job needs. It's like we're a digital staffing agency.
So nice pivot there. What are your top goals for this year as a CEO? Are you raising money? Is it go to market? What is your focus?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So, because of the pivot, we took one step back in order to make two forward. We're raising money again. We have a current raise going on at WeFunder. So, if you go to wefunder.com/sapientx, you'll find our raise there, and please join us in that raise. But our key thing is we are racing this year to get to $1 million of revenue. And that's a bit of a magic number for any founder because that is traditionally when the Series A investors, the professional investors, begin to really get serious. They get their checkbooks out and take a close look at companies and see if they're a fit for their investments. So we have two customers that we're working with right now that we believe can bring us to that level later this year, and we're just working really hard on execution. We're open to new opportunities, of course, but at least we have two strong customers that we're working with right now.
Where did your obsession with VR and AI began? Like, why do you feel this is the future? Why do you feel this is the best UX way to interact in this environment?
Well, something you don't know about me yet. I studied architecture at Cornell in upstate New York. My structural engineering professor was Don Greenberg, and Don was, I didn't really realize at the time, but he was one of the founding fathers of computer graphics. Uh, he and his team at Cornell started Radiosity, which was an important part of computer graphics to this day. Well, I saw what Don and his crew were doing in the labs, and I realized that this was an exciting new tool to be able to design buildings. The idea that you could make a digital version of your vision, share it with others, and also make a better building because you could walk through it virtually and see it from all angles and improve it. That was a wonderful idea, but it was so early back then that I would have had to have left architecture and gone into the engineering school because I would have had to write my own program. I had to wait a few years until there were other people who wrote those programs, and I was one of the very first people to use these new tools as an architect to design high-rise buildings in San Francisco. That led me to build Virtual San Francisco, which we released as a VR project in 1995. It was literally the first 3D on the internet and certainly the first virtual place. And all of a sudden, the technology companies discovered us, and we started building real applications that use these cities and talking characters. And that dragged me out of real architecture into a whole new world of software development. And it's been so much fun. And the latest chapter of this is being able to use these technologies with AI talking characters to make wonderful, delightful interfaces. I think a lot about Walt Disney with the early Disney making his talking characters, with Steve Jobs and the Pixar team making uh, a newer generation of delightful characters. Can you imagine either of those companies making a system that was voice only? Part of what's wonderful is the characters are lovable and entertaining, and we seek every single day to be as good as what those two companies had produced in terms of characters that delight people. And it's a huge challenge, and we're working hard on it every single day.
Do you feel deep fake will be a problem soon?
Well, so I've actually been thinking a lot about that overnight. I was in a conference the last 2 days, and one of the presenting companies was a startup, and they were saying that they wanted to make talking characters and they could produce a version of you or your grandmother or a famous person in 30 minutes. And I got to tell you, that's total bullshit. And I see a lot of that, and it's frustrating. There are not only con men, but there are also people who want to do destructive things, such as using deep fakes in bad ways to fraudulently misrepresent people, to fraudulently portray people in political campaigns, and that's a difficult thing. A lot of the AI conferences I go to will be attended by politicians who stand up and say, "We're busy working on guardrails for this." But I'm skeptical about their ability to make the guardrails. If you look at the EU draft regulations for regulating conversational AI systems, you can tell they have no idea what they're talking about. There are many, many types of AI that are used in voice systems, and they only wrote about learning. It's like saying a Swiss Army knife only has one blade. It just points out how incapable and ill-equipped politicians are to regulate our industry. I think that an important thing is for us who produce AI to be ethical about how it's deployed, to be transparent with people. And so we've announced that we're going to begin putting little stickers on the screens of all of our AI applications disclosing that you're speaking with an AI character. That's the first step. The second step is to talk about, to be able to click on that button and find out what AI is being used, is data being collected on me, to be totally transparent about what the AI is doing so that the public can be informed and make choices whether to proceed with that AI or not. I think that is us as an industry being responsible and not waiting for politicians to solve the problems, but for us to do it ourselves as an industry. So that's very much on my mind right now.
Right. And how would you put the guardrails if you were in the position of these politicians?
Well, so the direction they're going is one of certification, disclosure. Uh, that's okay, but it favors the very large companies and unduly taxes the startups. So what it will tend to do is make the AI, the Microsofts and Googles and Apples of the world dominate the picture because they're able to comply with all these government regulations that are being brewed, and it will put a damper on creativity and the formation of new companies. Plus, we've seen regulations that were well-meaning in the past that were meant to help steer industries end up being tragically misguided. And I think there's huge concern about that. Um, Now, it's inevitable that there'll be regulation. GDPR was a good regulation in the EU, and hopefully here in the US, we'll eventually have something that's as good as GDPR. We're heading in that direction. So it's not always bad, but let's clean up our own industry first. And if the politicians want to add to that, well, that's what they will do. But let's fix it ourselves.
What about like 40% of the people I speak to nowadays? They're like, yeah, AI won't replace humans, avatars, they won't feel authentic. There's that human thing that humans and human conversation have that AIs don't. What do you have to say to that?
So there's four main types of AI that we use in making a talking character. First part converts your words into text. On a scale of 1 to 10, that's at about a 9 right now. The second part is natural language understanding, and that's the core of what we do. That's taking those words and figuring out what they mean and giving a good response. Now, uh, we do a really good job of it, I think. We test our systems up to 99% accuracy before we release them in the field. And we believe that that is the highest accuracy of any system in the industry. Um, as cool as GPT-4 is and ChatGPT, in the laboratory, they only get 80% accuracy. And our customers think that that's unacceptably low. Plus, if there's a mistake, it's nearly impossible to fix it because the AI scientists don't actually know how it works, so they can't fix it. And being an AI scientist using an LLM today is a little bit like a monkey with a typewriter. Literally, anybody can be a prompt engineer. You don't actually have to be an engineer. You might be better off being an English major doing prompt engineering than a computer scientist. Um, so that that's a problem. And all of a sudden there's 500 startups all using ChatGPT to revolutionize the world and change how business is going to happen. I don't think so. I think those are kind of snake oil sales pitches that are fed to investors to get millions of dollars for those companies. They're writing checks that they can't cash. And we need, as an industry, to be realistic about the technologies, to acknowledge all the different forms of AI that go into these systems, and to be clear-minded about choosing the right tool to do AI, not just what's fashionable this week.
Do you think of the future companies that are in the LLM race? OpenAI, we've got the recent governance mayhem. We have Claude that's keeping up with its new language model, which is the best in my opinion. And there's companies like Hugging Face that are going open source. There's Llama of Facebook. There's Google that's trying to keep up with Gemini. Um, who's gonna win that battle in your opinion, and what would that mean for the market?
I don't have an opinion, but there is healthy competition going on. And if you study this, one week one's ahead, the next week another's ahead. Um, I think most of those companies have been very ethical, and I applaud the companies that have put their work into open source and that write white papers and clearly disclose what their systems can and can't do. That said, there's a couple of troubling things in there. OpenAI says they're achieving 80% general conversational accuracy in the laboratory with a footnote. The footnote says with 5 volleys, which means they are asking the same question 5 times in a row. And if it gets it right one time, they count that as a positive. Well, that's not very real world. And I think that while it's great that they're doing that kind of testing and disclosure, I think they need to shift to doing testing in real world settings. You also see in all of that competition, some people are tempted to not tell the truth. And Google did that apparently back in December when they announced Gemini and made this very compelling video, and then later had to walk it back and say, well, our system can't actually do that. That's our vision of what it can do in the future. Well, that's a disservice to all of us in the industry. We've seen boom and bust in the AI world time and time again, and we're in a big hype cycle right now. And I wish people would knock it off because it hurts all of us when you overhype your work.
Right. And for your company, what does that mean? Are you dependent on the progress of the industry? Are you adapting to what the competition does out there? How do you actually move with this existing market?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, we made a hybrid system, adding GPT 3.5 at the time as as a supplement, if you will, to our symbolic reasoning AI system. And that was combining the best of both worlds. And I think actually a lot of people are doing those hybrid systems and they don't talk about it so much. And the reason they don't talk about it is fashion. Right now, LLMs are in fashion, clearly. And they don't want to talk about any other kind of AIs in their pipeline. But I'm seeing people do things that are strongly suggested that they are actually doing hybrid systems. For instance, Alexa started out as a rule-based system. Then they started adding machine learning, and we used to benchmark Alexa every 3 months, as well as the other primary voice systems. And we noticed that once they added machine learning into their system, it probably helped them to scale, but the downside is their accuracy went way down, and it's still down. Now that's an early example of a hybrid system. I'm sure there's others out there. Um, one company that uses our AI is Core, um, but they blend it with two other types of AI, and uh, they were able to achieve the very highest ranking in the Gartner Quad chart because they had done such a good job of their blended AI system. So I really think that's the path of the future. And not that we're going to reproduce a human brain, but think about it. Your brain has different lobes that have different functions. And it makes sense in our own heads, and it makes sense for our talking characters that they have different types of AI that are optimized for different tasks.
Where can we find more about you and the company, David?
So right now, we are at sapientx.com. And from there, we have links to our Facebook, our LinkedIn pages, all the social media things are linked from there. And if you think you like what we're doing and you want to join our team as an investor, please check us out on WeFunder. You can just type in Sapient X or go to wefunder.com/SapientX, and that's where we are. Um, I'll be continuing to do podcasts, and some of them will be open so that you can ask questions. We want to get the word out about what we're doing and engage people on important topics such as ethics and accuracy of these voice systems. All boats rise together if we do this right together.